Hey, 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 it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. Today I interview Heather Lastiwka. Heather is a Power of Process alumni who left a very illustrious corporate career for launching an interior design firm. And though she has over a decade of experience in HR, we also worked as Earls girls. So we have that in common. We share our experience actually working in a restaurant, how that parlays to running a design firm. But she has so much experience that she brings to the table. And yet she still decided that she needed to take power of process. And we talk today in this episode about a lot of different things, especially about that transition from corporate career to being a solopreneur running an interior design firm. We talk about the skills that you have that sometimes you overlook or don't even recognize are useful and transferable into running an interior design firm. Heather always loved design, had a pull from a young age to go into design as a career, but just didn't do it. She opted for the more secure, stable route in corporate until years later in her 40s decides it's time, I'm moving into design. She started investing in real estate with her first landlord at 19 years old, and her story that she shares here of what she did is so impressive. It actually gives me ideas of how I could potentially partner with someone for a flip. So thank you for that, Heather. She negotiated to improve the property at just the cost of the materials, and in turn, she got a share of the increased value once it was sold the following year. So smart. She flipped her own 5 properties while she moved into a full time corporate career. When raising a family began, real estate and design took a backseat. And then years later, fast forward to 2 years ago, Heather, she now has teenagers. To give you an idea of timeline, Heather left corporate and pursued her passion full time, now serving clients with full service value based design. Heather shares her experience going through Power of Process and how she wasn't able to complete the course the first go around because life got in the way, but the takeaways she has and how she's come back year after year. I hope you enjoy this episode with Heather.
All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business.
Welcome to Resilient by Design, Heather. I'm very excited to have you here.
Thank you. I am also very excited to be here. I'm actually not even sure how I am even here, but that's part of the story we'll talk about later.
I cannot wait to dive into all of those things. Before we do, can you just introduce yourself to our listeners today?
Sure. So I'm Heather Lastiwka, and I am the owner and lead designer for Hetherington Properties, Inc. We're based just outside of Edmonton in a beautiful little bedroom community called Beaumont. We literally say life is better in Beaumont. And I have a really great extended team, a part-time design associate and a bookkeeper. We're going to talk about that in a little while. And I've been doing this full-time now for just over 2 years. I made a career transition into this out of corporate. And I think that's probably enough for a good start. I'm a mom of 2 kids. That's probably one of the most important parts. 17, she's actually writing a diploma this morning and graduating from high school. And my 14-year-old is writing his grade 9 PAT. So yeah, everyone's got
Wow.
stressful things this morning.
Yes. Wow. That's amazing. And I love your career journey. So I want us to talk a little bit about that because I didn't know all of the details. I mean, before when I first met you inside Power of Process, I didn't know your story until like I guess it was after the course had wrapped and we chatted and I was
Mhm.
blown away. I think it's so interesting. I think others are going to love it too. I also love your story because you are coming at this, later in life, so to say. Like this is
Yeah.
not your first career. You were doing something completely. You've done lots of things actually, and we have a lot in common, which I think is
Hmm.
really neat. Shout out to Earls.
Yeah. A couple Earls girls here.
Earls girls
This is
here.
how we age, everyone.
Fabulously, of course.
Yeah.
Actually, sidebar, I did go to Earl's in December before Christmas. There's one near a shopping mall in Toronto called Sherway Gardens, and Chris
Mhm.
and I went for lunch. And it was funny just sitting there, being the guest. It brought
Yes.
back so many. I don't know if you had these emotions, and if anyone's listening has worked in a restaurant or a bar, and you might be able to relate to this, but that feeling of, wow, I'm on the, and I've been here for a while. Obviously, I haven't worked at the restaurant since I was in my 20s, but wow, I get to be on the other side of things. And I
Hmm.
watched as these like young girls and boys or men and women are, but busybodying around and they're taking care of customers, they're behind the bar, they're doing all the things. And I looked at them and I thought, oh my God, that was me. And I just remember when I was in that position, so desperately wanting to be the guest on the other side, the person who had the time to take a lunch and have a glass of wine. And I used to just envision one day I'll get to be that adult with that life. And here I was sitting there and looking at these people and thinking, oh my gosh, like how things have changed, but also, holy heck, that was a lot of work.
It is so much work. My daughter is now working in a restaurant. It's not Earl's, but it has a similar kind of, energy and vibe and high expectations. And I say this, I told you this too, Rebecca, that I credit a good portion of the direction of my career to Earl's. One, because they're heavily process oriented. And
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
so it's trained us both on how to do that. And I told her when you're looking for a restaurant, look for one that's like that because it means they're going to have consistent experience. It means they're going to be focused on delivery to the client, and that's great training ground for you. Like before you start
Mm-hmm.
doing other things and experiencing other ways of running a business, be in one that's running really well. And she and I were out for lunch actually on Boxing Day. The whole family does this kind of Boxing Day fun thing together, and we all went for lunch at Earl's. And I had the same experience. I was sitting there and I was watching every busy activity. It's Boxing Day, so it's super busy, right? And watching them all with their little ear things in because we didn't have any of that
Oh
technology when
God,
I was
no. That tech was
we
not there for me.
no, no. And so, yeah, so, but it was fascinating because restaurants, I still highly believe this. I think every person, like there's countries where they make everybody serve in the military. I honestly believe everybody should have
Mm.
to serve in service. I think it transforms us as people. But yes, that was the beginning, was Earl's. And what is really interesting about their model that I apply today as a business owner is they really understand who their target talent population is. They know that they are capturing a group of young people, and their job as great talent seekers is to find the people who have the potential for business ownership and leadership and nurture that and dig in deep to train them. And as a
Mm-hmm.
business owner, I still today think that that's like probably one of our most important things is how do you find talent? And I just don't think that it's maybe in all the obvious places. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
school for sure. School is important, but I look for people who are like going above and beyond, outside of their box, can think creatively, and I'll teach them the technical stuff they might need.
Yeah.
And Earl's taught me that, truly.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I mean, I didn't expect the conversation to go here, but I do think it's
Yeah.
worth talking about for those who are listening. Um, this idea of process for me was first introduced when I worked at Earls,
Hmm.
because as you say, they're great at finding the right talent, but what they also are great at and what they have the process for is nurturing that talent and training their employees, and not only just training them on the do A to Z, like do step A, B, C, D
Yeah.
first, and then you got a 2-minute drink order and like all the processes,
Yeah.
but they also are really great at creating a sense of community and creating, what would you call it? Like they have core values,
A culture.
culture, exactly. And
Mhm.
so, and some people might call it a cult, but that's cult comes from culture. And it truthfully, and it is something that I guess for me, I never really understood how companies could operate like a well-oiled machine until I worked there. And so much that
Mhm.
and you've seen this because you took power of process, but so much of my teachings, I go back to experiences that I had working in the restaurant in that particular chain because they had everything outlined. They had everything that you would do from the moment a customer walked through the door to the moment they left was outlined, and they taught it, and we served our
Mhm.
clients following that same process. It needed to be repeatable, and it is the um franchise model. And I'm not suggesting designers need to franchise, but there's so much
No.
to learn from that. And that's really what helped me to develop my course. And then I want to parlay this now, Heather, into your career because I think
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
interesting. We were both Earls girls back in
Yeah.
the day. I think we were both also the day leader, were we not?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
funny. Which for
And
those who
I
don't know, it's
actually
like the
I did it
manager.
all. I mean, like, anyway, that's in the
Oh yeah,
side
you
note,
went
but
way further up than I
oh,
did.
it's so silly. But anyway, I mean, it's not silly. It was great. I love that experience. But yes, I was recruited straight out of Earls. I was going to university at the time. I got my big girl job, as I sort of say. I was recruited by a group of executives who used to come in for lunch every Friday. So again, if this is early in your career and you're what you think is stuck in a restaurant, don't view it that way. And I'm just going to go sideways for 1 second and I'm going to come back to this. So this is a book called Gap in the Gain,
Great book.
and
Love that
it
book.
is a great book. It talks about how to turn every experience in your life into what you're gaining from it, which is really like finding the learning, finding the nugget. I highly recommend this book. It's so valuable to changing your mindset. And you're not stuck anywhere that you are. You have these opportunities to be able to take away learning, figure out what you're getting out of this. And some of it is about changing your character. Some of it is about opportunities. And that's what happened for me at Earl. I wasn't stuck. I felt great there and I learned a lot and I was grateful. But I did get recruited straight out of that into an HR position. I worked for an organization that was all over the country in small, small, small communities doing retail. Some people might know it. It was Sands stores. And
SAAN, right?
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Surplus
remember those
Army
stores.
and Navy is actually what it stood for. But by the time
That's
I was
so
at SAN,
funny.
it didn't look at all like a surplus Army and Navy. But yes, in every tiny little small community across the country, I did that for a series of years and I learned how to do training at a whole other level because I was doing a lot of training for Earls. And then I moved from there into another retail, which was all up in the Arctic, called the Northern Stores, and I was working in essential skills training, so literacy, largely literacy. And we were in Inuit communities like Kangiksulaujawak and Iqaluit and Baker Lake. And uh, again, I would highly recommend that Canadians find their way to Northern Canada because it's like two different countries. It's like completely different countries. Lots of travel all the way through. And then I moved into construction and technology, and after that into finance. And through the course of my corporate career, um, really there wasn't a day from the time I was 19 onwards, there wasn't a day that I wasn't leading people in some way. Um, and there's been times when I did that really well, and there's been times that I did that really poorly, and had to learn the tough way and the hard way. You know that we don't take our people for granted, and we have the best opportunity for success when everybody's ideas are engaged and included. Ultimately, still one person has to make the choices, but that I skinned my knees in lots of places and did a lot of things that I would probably go back and do differently. Um, but I think at this stage of my life, what's been great about those experiences is recognizing that you can be resilient. Like you come through them and you figure out who you are and what you stand for and what you're willing to adapt. And by the time I was leaving corporate permanently, which was 3 years ago now, I had reached total burnout, actually, like literal, like clinical burnout. I was in hospital for a little bit and I was physically completely wrecked. I'd wrecked my body. I was working 16 hours a day, traveling all over the place, sometimes never leaving a desk, sitting there for 16 hours straight, like all the things. When people talk about toxic work, they tend to talk about work environments. And I worked for a great company who actually set up really positive environments for the most part. We're a corporation, so no one's perfect. But I was not good to myself, and I worked too hard for too long and didn't take good rejuvenation time. And I came to the end of that and realized, okay, I need to do some things differently. and what do I really want to do in this next chapter? And hence here we are. So my whole life, from the time I was 19, I wanted to work in design and in real estate. And I didn't talk about that yet. There's a phase of life where I was doing that. And I thought, okay, this is what I have always loved to do. It's always the part of me that gives me energy, either in my own home or helping my friends and family, because I've done lots of that. And I thought, okay, enough's enough. Like, I'm going to listen to that little voice that has been saying all along that that's what you love to do. And I just went for it.
Okay, I love your story because how many listeners right now can relate to that feeling, that pull? I
Mm-hmm.
know that many of the designers who listen to this podcast have left corporate or are
Yep.
still actually working corporate,
Yep.
dreaming of the day when they don't do that full time anymore. So I love that you've shared that and that feeling that it was like this nagging, like you always wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
it. And it sounds like you kind of ignored it for a while because you were in this
Uh-huh.
sort of rat race of this is my life, this is my job, this is practical. There
Yep.
may have been thoughts of, well, running into interior design firm, that seems a little bit, I don't know, fluffy. And can I even make money doing that? And, or maybe not. I don't know. What held
I
you
never
back
challenged.
from
Yeah,
making that
it's a great
transition
question.
sooner?
Well, I grew up in Winnipeg, and while and like I graduated in 1993, I'm 49. I turned 50 in a month and a half.
Woo, happy
Oh, I know,
birthday.
it's crazy. It's crazy. And in Winnipeg, I mean, there were interior designers when I was graduating from high school, but they were serving a group of people who, frankly, in the way I grew up, were like another world.
Like
And
ultra
I
luxury.
ultra luxury. Yeah. Now, I mean, lots of people would think like, is there even ultra luxury in Winnipeg? But there is. um, but it's a pretty small market, and so like my exposure was very very minimal, and there was no HGTV in those days. I know, shocking, no one can remember those days, but there was none of that, and so it didn't seem like an accessible career is a good word to use.
Mm,
U of M has had a great design degree program for forever.
interesting.
As far as I understand, actually for a while they were the only university that did it,
Hmm.
um, but I just didn't feel like I could do that. I couldn't visualize it. And so I pursued it for fun in investment properties. When I was 19, I moved out, and I really wanted to live in a certain neighborhood. It was really important to me. I loved character homes at that time, and I really wanted to be in that neighborhood. And like that wasn't really a neighborhood that easily rented out. And for those of you who are from Winnipeg or know it, it's River Heights. Beautiful neighborhood. So I drove up and down streets to find houses that were for sale because we had no online listings then. Yes, this is how old I am.
If it existed, it was only for real estate agents, probably,
That's
right?
correct. I don't
Yeah.
even know because the internet didn't actually even get started for public until like 1994, something like that. Anyway,
Good point.
so and this is how far back we are. So I drove up and down and I called real estate agents and I said, this house has been listed for a long time. Is the homeowner willing to rent it out? And I'm coming with two guys, and both of them work for Home Depot. We will be willing to renovate or update the house for a reduced rent. Well, somebody took us up on it. And I negotiated that we would receive a portion of the return profit at the end of that year when they relisted it. And we did it. And we got a return, and I was hooked. Like that was it. I was like,
Okay.
okay.
Whoa. Stop here for a second because this is a unique idea I have never heard of before. I'm going to ask all my real estate investor flipper friends, like, have you done this? Wow. At the age of 19, you
Yeah.
had such a business mind to come up with this idea. And then you had the nerve or the balls, or whatever you want to call it, to actually approach realtors with your harebrained idea.
Yeah.
And someone said yes. Like, look at
Yeah.
you being an entrepreneur early on, maybe without realizing it. What a
Well,
brilliant idea.
I mean, two things. I don't, it was purely selfish. Like I wanted to live in River Heights. I mean, I was 19 and that's where I wanted to live. And, I'm going to make it
That
happen.
was your
And
motivation.
that was my motivation. Now, I was raised by two entrepreneurs, and I did not appreciate that until much later in my life, that the way we were steeped as kids was with owner mentality and like you eat what you kill. I hate that saying, but basically you have to hunt, you got to go
Yeah.
after life. It's not coming to your front door. Like
Yeah.
that was how I grew up. I did not know that consciously until much later.
Yeah.
But I try to teach our kids that today. My husband is an entrepreneur as well. So they're growing up in a similar, environment. But at the time, that's just what I was going to go do however I could do it. And but yeah, like I was hooked. I'm like, okay, you can make improvements to a property and you can make some money. Now in Winnipeg, it was difficult to make money on property at that time. It was a very flat market. It's still
Mhm.
not, super high skyrocketing. But we got a little bit, of money, and I parlayed that little bit of money into the second rent property. And then by that point, I already had proof of,
Mhm.
output. And then I got into flipping. So then I bought my own house shortly after that. We flipped that. And then we did five more after that. And then we moved to Alberta. And I had kids and we stopped flipping and
Right.
I left it alone. So those first sort of 10 years in my 20s, maybe even a bit longer than that. That's where I kind of got my feet wet around. I have
Mhm.
some instinct for this. I know how to figure out what the market likes, and then I turn it into some version of design. Now, we know flipping is not the same as designing for clients. I really know that now after these last 2 years.
Oh, don't we all
Um,
know? I
yeah,
think the biggest joke whenever I talk to designers or I'm at my ski club and there's a contractor there, a couple of them, then we chat, and
yeah,
everyone's dream, they always say to me, I would like to just eliminate the client. Like literally. But like flipping right now is actually very challenging in this
it is
market
very
in my
challenging.
city
Yeah.
in Toronto. And these are people who maybe used to flip, but they're like, I can't flip because I can't, there's not really enough money in it right
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
But it's so interesting. It's so true.
It's
It's
very
not the
different.
same. Yeah.
No, it's not the same. There's pros and cons to both, actually, right? Because when you're flipping, you're having more fun in a way because you don't have to work to someone's brief or to someone's needs, but you also do have to work to a little more vanilla typically
Yeah.
so that you're appealing to a larger audience. Now that changes once you're up in the million plus because people are looking for more unique, more interesting, more personalized
Mm-hmm.
homes in those cases. It also changes once you have a brand or a name because people know now that they can expect that your brand or your name, when your product comes back out onto the market, they're like, it's by a designer, Woo.
Ooh,
So
fancy, fancy pants.
yeah, so then they
Okay.
value that, but in a regular market, they don't.
Yeah. So I think this is great. So you have early experience flipping homes. So you
Yeah.
have design chops. You know how to run a job site, I imagine. You
Hmm.
get the ins and outs of the construction industry. And
Hmm.
then you have this incredible, illustrious career in HR. You're
Hmm.
really like fine-tuned and dialed in on process and training and customer service. So this sounds to me like the perfect storm for starting your own design firm. And yet you still decided to take power of process,
Yes.
which I think is amazing. And I would love to know how. Start by telling us, I guess, where were you at with your interior design business before you decided to take power of process? What
I
were the
had
biggest
not,
challenges that you were facing?
I hadn't even incorporated yet. And you don't have to be incorporated, obviously, to run a business, but I hadn't started an actual business. I just knew by that point that it's what I wanted to do. I started by doing color consultations and like I'm talking really just literally color consultations, a small, tiny little portfolio. And I thought this will be a good way to get my feet wet in interacting with clients and even, can I read them? Can I understand them? And I was about 6 months into that when I felt like I do have the ability to do more because the conversations were naturally leading into design recommendations, even though I wasn't actually getting paid for that at that time. But I felt fearful that I didn't have formal training, and I thought, where do I go? And so I started looking for formal training. Um, and at the
Formal
time,
training
somebody,
with design or formal
like I
training
thought,
with
I'll go.
running the business?
Nope, just with design
Just with design.
initially.
Okay.
Yeah, because I had run businesses before, and so I wasn't worried about the business aspect.
Mm.
But running a design business is different. So anyway, I looked into design certificates, and I started asking people who I knew who were in the industry. I started talking to trade partners and those kind. I just talked to anybody I could talk to, and asked them if they had any recommendations. And I got a recommendation from a friend of mine whose parents ran a contracting company. And she said, you should check out Rebecca Hay. She sent me your Facebook group initially, which now no longer exists. And when I was in there, people were talking about this course called Power of Process, and probably your team as well. Anyway, I registered right away when I saw it because I have a desire for process, and I know how important it can be, and I know how great it can be for the people who are in it, because it simplifies the work and it makes the work more fun to do when you can just not spend your energy on like reinventing the wheel all the time. And I didn't do very well at completing my own modules in the first round. I got 3 modules in, and then I landed this huge project, my first big, huge project. And I thought, okay, thank goodness that this is self-study and that I can come back to it at any time. Because I was like, thank goodness, because otherwise I would have wasted the funds and I wouldn't have been able to do it, because I needed to divert my energy to this first big project. It was crucial for my business.
Mm-hmm.
And then thank goodness that as an alumni, we can come back in and we can be part of the next round, or however later down the road, how many, and we can listen to the next round and be participants again.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I did it again in the second round. Okay. So like, I don't learn very well the first time. So then the second round, I was like, great, I'll just refresh myself on modules 1, 2, and 3, and I'll pick up at module 4. And I got module 4 done and another big project. And I focused in on that again, but I kept thinking, I know I need to come back to it. So I was listening to your podcast in the middle. And then finally this fall, I have now completed 3 times the charm, people. Like
I
that's
love it. But you know what, Heather? I think I'm glad that you've shared this journey that you had taking the course, because it's not
Mhm,
uncommon. It is there's the live component of the course, and I do only do it twice a year because
mhm,
there's something magical, and I
very,
think you agree, about coming together with other women. Let's face it, it's mostly women. When men are welcome, but it's mostly women who
yeah.
are all striving towards the same goal. They're working through the material together, and we have live study halls on Zoom that I lead, where you're able to ask questions and share with each other. And there's something so powerful about that. But I can see it, and I know from my own life can get in the way. Like, to your
Yeah.
example, you land a big project. That's freaking awesome. I get that your attention is diverted from the course that
Hmm.
you had every intention of signing up for and following through on. But that's why everything is recorded. So the modules are pre-recorded and they're in your portal to watch at
Hmm.
any time. And then if you miss the live call, that call is recorded and saved. So I love that you really did. And I love that you came back to it,
Yes.
right?
I mean, one, I think there's lots of content out there that's free. That's great. When you're in a stage where you maybe need to access every resource you can at limited funds, you should maximize it. But also there's something self-accountable when you have to spend money on a course. It makes you, hopefully, it's not like going to the gym. Because for me, like, I pay for the gym and then I never go.
You
So I
still don't
stopped
go.
doing that. Stopped doing that to myself. But this was not like that, because it's a passion that I was interested in. Probably everybody who's listening, it's a passion that they're interested in. They're not stuck. They want to, right? And I just really love, Rebecca, that you create enough accountability in the cost, and the value is fully worth it. Like, it's not a sales podcast, but for me, it was transformative. Being able to apply those templates when I was in the project, I didn't know what I didn't know. And as soon as I was in the project, I started to run into the things that I needed to know. And so then I could go back to the modules and go, okay, now what do I do about this? And I would then open that module. I would self find my way through that. I maybe wouldn't have done my actual like homework exercises, but I at least could refer to the content. But by the time I was finishing and I actually was attending all the lives and I was meeting all the people, I made, I don't know, I would say there's probably 4 or 5 of people who I like had really connected with. You could see that you're like a
Awesome.
kindred spirit on the video. And so I reached out and connected. So I've made some great connections outside. So now I have bounce buddies, that you can like bounce ideas with and say, I've got this project and I'm struggling. I can't figure it out. That part is way beyond the value and of like the material. And I
Okay,
just,
a bounce
yeah,
buddy. Hold up.
bounce
I'm
buddy.
writing that down. That is the cutest term for like an accountability partner or what have you. A bounce buddy. I
A
love it.
bounce
You're
buddy.
bouncing ideas off of them. I love that. Bounce buddy.
Because
I literally just wrote that down.
I think creative work isn't really intended to be done in isolation, or at least it certainly isn't for
Yeah.
me. I have really found that that has been one of the most challenging parts. And it's so much better now that I have even these part-time people who are in my team with me because I just have that little bit of a, talk this out loud with me. And then,
Mhm.
and so, yeah. And then outside of my team, right, who think really differently than me, who are not inside of my aesthetic, whatever. It's been helpful in that way.
Yeah, I think sometimes when we start our own business, we're on our own, we're solopreneurs, and we think, well, I can just bounce ideas off my husband or my sister
Yeah,
or my mom or my friend who's a school teacher or is works corporate or what have you. And th- they may care about you and they may want to help you, but they aren't in it the way you're in it. And
right.
so, there's, the experts always say, like, be careful who you get advice from because
Yes.
you might be in a sticky situation with a client and you might ask someone for like how would you handle the situation, but that person is not a designer, that person is not running design projects, that person has no experience doing exactly what you do. And so
Yeah.
though the advice could work, it could also not, and they may not understand all the nuances, and then you have to explain it all. And so it's having a bounce buddy, to use your terminology, Heather, is a game changer. And it is something that as soon as you said there were about 4 or 5 people you connected with, I just kind of smiled because I hear this from all of our pop alumni. Everyone who shows up to the lives in the Facebook group, because we have a private
Mhm.
Facebook group for the duration of the course, ends up finding people that are either from their city, doing similar types of projects. Maybe they've been in business for the same amount of time. Maybe they're just starting out just like you. Maybe they've been in it 20 years. You find your people to connect with, and then they end up connecting on WhatsApp or doing their own Zooms and literally, like you said, bouncing ideas off each other. So it's so much more than just a course. And I love hearing that
Mhm.
from you, that that's been your experience too. I have a question for you. What, over the 3 times that you've come back in to work on the course, what would you say was a turning point for you or an aha moment while you were taking the course? Could you share if there was some specific insight that helped transform your
Mhm.
business approach?
Yep. 2 things. You say right from the beginning, progress over perfection. And I actually have that on the left side of my office over here. I have put it out onto a sheet of flip chart paper, and it sits at the top of the project planning charts because I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist, and I did not recognize that in myself until later in life. But especially on client delivery items. Getting my laundry done, yeah, I'm not a perfectionist. But when it comes to client delivery, I have such high expectations for what that experience should be for a client because they're handing over their most intimate spaces and they're giving us the highest, frankly, almost the highest level of trust next to a marriage counselor. like, um, we know details about their homes and their life that no one else does. And so my expectation
Totally.
for perfection is really high. But it was holding me back. And it was actually what was holding me back. You asked this question earlier, and I don't think I actually answered it. It was holding me back from making the career transition too, because I was scared that I wouldn't be able to deliver at the level that we see in magazines and whatever. And I've stopped letting that be a comparison, because the client hired me. They didn't hire Rebecca Hay. I compare myself against Rebecca's designs all the time. But in this instance, right? I mean, like they hired you, or in that case, they hired me. But so this progress over perfection, I have now applied in so many parts of my life. And I'm sure I had heard it before. Like I know I had heard it before, but it really stuck. And then every time we were on the live, you would talk about it and you would say, guys, okay, it's fine. You haven't done your homework assignment. It's fine. You're here, progress. And I thought, okay, like it really trenched in. So in whatever volume you said it, it hit me. And it is now like our mantra, progress over perfection. Just get that one thing selected today. I don't, just do one, like progress over perfection. And then the next was time blocking. Time blocking is the most transformative thing. And I used to do it in corporate. I didn't have a choice because we would be back to back to back to back to back to back to back, 14 meetings, all 14 hours if I did not time block. But when I got into solopreneurship, I didn't have somebody coming into my calendar. And so therefore, like I didn't realize that was an external force for me before that forced me to do that. And I'd completely abandoned the habit. So now I do Money Mondays and Future Fridays. So Money Mondays, obvious, it's all about the accounting and the finance and the invoicing and the reviewing and the analysis and making sure that I'm on top of the details, because I wasn't. I let my whole first year go by without doing a single thing in my bookkeeping. Don't do that to yourselves. Then once I got Money Mondays in, because you had said that was something that you actually did, and I was like, I'm adopting that immediately. And that really helped me. Then I realized, okay, I've now got like the book ending happening, and I'm focused on clients Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and sometimes Saturday. But I'm not working on my business. I'm just in it. I'm operating it. I'm the designer and I'm operating the business. So I'm like in it. Who's building the website? Who's posting the social media? Who's learning? Who's reading a book? Who's going to a podcast to get more information? No one. The only one that's going to do that is me, but there was no time for it. So now Fridays, it's Future Friday. It doesn't mean I'm like religious about it. Like sometimes I have to take a meeting here or there, but I am almost religious about it. I protect that day. I take courses. The team and I take courses if we just took, basic CEU with Benjamin Moore on color foundations last Friday. Like even just basic stuff that just gets us out of the client mindset and into the stretching our mindset so that we can think differently about the work and feel refreshed every day, and gives us a little bit of nourishment. And then finally, I turned on my website as a result. 2.5 years in, I still had no website. I literally turned it on last week. So
I love this.
yeah.
I love this. So Money Mondays, I talk about, as you know, and I love that. I will say, I love this Future Fridays. I think it's just fun to have a little play on words. It makes it a little bit more enjoyable.
Yeah.
But for anyone listening, what I like about that is I feel as though at the end of the week, and I mean, everybody's different, but at the end of the week, I used to try and do Finance Fridays, right? FF, ooh, that's cute too. But I don't feel like doing numbers on a Friday. No. And more often than not, I would maybe sleep in, or I'd want to go on a coffee date, or I'd leave early for the weekend. And so that always got pushed because numbers are not my personal passion.
Me neither.
But Future Fridays, Heather, you're onto something, because I love to vision. I love goal setting. I love working on my business. Like I love that aspect of it. So to have that at the end of the week when it's kind of like a fun Friday activity. And I love that you're doing that with your team. Like that's a great time to do the CEU, to maybe even go to a lunch and learn or do something like that to better your knowledge, or for you to work on anything in your business, like your website. You're right, because designers often get overwhelmed because there's so much to do, because you're wearing all the hats. Even if you have an assistant, you still end up wearing all the hats. You're responsible for everything. And a lot of the things in your early years of business, you can't delegate to an assistant, right?
Well, I didn't unless
you have the money to outsource to a professional.
Right. That's
And a
right.
lot of us don't when we're starting
No,
out. So I
no.
love that. That's a great tip.
Well, and I think here's what I found too. I also was doing finance on Fridays. I didn't have the fun play on words, but here's the problem. Now you send out an invoice to a client on Friday afternoon. So guess when the questions start coming in?
On the
On the
weekend.
weekend. And so now you're setting yourself up. And I felt like I could, I didn't, it's so obvious when you say it out loud, but I thought, no, and I don't want my client ending the week and going into what is their restful time, thinking about the thing that stresses them out the most, which is the money. So if I could
Mm,
send it out on like a Monday afternoon or a Tuesday morning, whatever, then all during the week, they have time to respond and ask questions or send the funds or say, oh, I have to send it in 2 e-transfers, all the transactional things. If they didn't get to it to the weekend, I don't feel the responsibility to be responding on the weekend because I sent it on Monday. But if I send it Friday, I feel a responsibility to respond on Saturday morning. And so that little
100%.
tiny change makes a huge difference.
And that applies to, as you know, I teach inside Pop about sending weekly progress updates to your clients
Yes.
and how I used to send them on Fridays. And I stopped doing that for that exact
Yes.
reason because sure, I can say, and I'm doing air quotes here for those who aren't watching on YouTube, I can say I don't check my email on the weekend, but I do. I check
Me too.
things and I might not want to respond to it. But now, if I get, let's say, a million questions from a client or something that feels urgent, or they're upset about something, or I get pushback, I read that email on a Saturday morning or a
Mm-hmm.
Friday night after,
Mm-hmm.
I put the kids to bed or I'm out for dinner. And then I feel immediate anxiety and I carry that with me through the weekend. Now, not everyone's as sensitive as I am, but I would rather avoid that so that I can enjoy my
Yes.
weekend. So I love that. That's so true.
Yeah. We send our progress reports out on Thursday morning because we've had enough of the week that we know where progress is at. Then they have time Thursday and all day Friday to be able to interact or respond if they need to. Because I'm exactly the same as you. If I receive something that feels like just that little hint of there's something here that they're worried about or they're concerned about or they don't like, whatever, I get it. I start feeling this anxiety around I'm not serving them in some way.
I
So
know.
yeah, it helps. You have to
That's a
sort of
whole other,
learn your
oops,
own. Yeah,
that's a whole other podcast episode.
it is. It's a whole other podcast.
Why do we feel the need to people please our clients all the time?
Yeah. I
I mean,
mean,
I've
we're in a
talked
very
about this,
personal
but
business, so I think that's part of it, right? It's a very personal
yeah.
business. And that's why and that says we care about our clients. It says we care about their experience. And I frankly won't ever change that about myself. But what I do have to do is work at how I'm carrying it because it's not healthy to
Mm-hmm.
turn that into something negative for yourself.
And what I can say I've learned, if we go back to the Earls example and we talk about process, it's about setting up a system, a way
Mhm.
of doing things that sets boundaries, not just for your clients, but for yourself.
Mhm.
And especially if you are someone who cares so much, you want to please everybody, you take things personally. If you're at all like that, having structure in your business is going to help protect you from that,
Yes. Yes.
hands down.
Yes. Also, if
Okay.
you're ADHD, like I am,
Yeah.
structure structure really helps. It helps you be productive and it gives you a feeling of accomplishment. It's the opposite of what I told myself forever that I just need to be fluid and da, da, da. I need the fluid for sure, but I do that in the design work. But in the business, I create structure for myself that allows me to stay on track.
Yeah, it is somewhat counterintuitive because I'm like you in that I always used to think like I don't like routine. I don't want to
Hmm.
have the structure to my day. I want to be able to just like do what I want. But actually,
Hmm.
it ends up causing more anxiety because then
Yes.
certain things don't get done. And then instead of enjoying your time, which is supposed to be like fabric sourcing, all you're thinking is about all the other things that you haven't done and when are you going to find time to do those things. And instead of just being in the moment and enjoying the design process, you are overwhelmed with everything else. And
Overwhelmed.
so
Hmm.
by having structure, having a system that you follow, by following process in your business so clients know what to expect every step of the way, giving yourself that breathing time, you will actually, and this is what I found worked for me, and I don't know if you've experienced this, is I started being more creative. I
Yes.
started taking the time to come up with more unique designs. Before I had a process, I felt rushed in everything I did.
Yes.
And so I would just phone it in. I hate to say it or I hate to admit it, but there were times where I would phone it in and say, oh, that's good enough. Okay, that'll be fine because I don't have the time to go to that other store that I really wanted to go to that's out on the outskirts of town. So, you know what? This will be fine. It fits in the budget. It's not the dream that I had, but it'll be okay. And then
It's good
it's
enough.
good enough. And yes, there are going to be times where that's going to happen. But
Hmm.
once I established process and I had a system and a routine, it was like, oh my God, I have all morning just to work on this design. Okay,
Hmm.
well, let's really think about this. And oh, I remember I saw that thing when I was on that trip and I was in Krakow. Maybe we could do something like it was just boom, such a change for me.
It's true because you're now not spending all the energy recreating the wheel each time on the doing part. Instead, you're spending the energy and the creativity. I won't say that we're there. I mean, literally last night, I was working with somebody online who's helping me to just like create documents because I can't create documents. Like there's people who do that who are really good at it, graphic designers, just
Yep.
admin people who actually really enjoy that work. And I said, I have like 5 pages of standardized things that we have to have like checklists for. And,
Hmm.
I don't have it. Like it's not anywhere. And so I've at least done the work on what needs to be standardized. And in our most critical, repeatable things, we have those things documented now. And now we're getting into the next level. So again, progress over perfection. And
Yeah.
where I
Well, I
was
love
2 years
this.
ago compared to where we are today, like, I mean, we're not even the same business, which is back to we're in the game. We're not in what we haven't yet got done. I'm not worried about what we haven't yet got done. It'll get done. I'm
You're going to spend your entire life learning and adding and changing, and
yes,
it'll never be perfect. And unfortunately, it'll never be done.
true.
Right. So
Yes.
you got to just live in it.
You
Okay.
just got
This
to
has
keep
been
going.
such a good conversation, Heather. Before we do wrap up today, I would
Yeah.
love for you to share a last nugget of wisdom with our listeners.
Okay. So, two things. If you have not yet made the leap into what you want to do, if that's you, there's a couple things I would say to do during the time that you're in right now, which is really think clearly about what transferable skills you already have. Because I think I was holding myself back because I didn't have design skills, which obviously to do this work, we have to have design skills. That's obvious. But I was discounting all the skills that I did bring to the table. So if you're a designer and you've gone to school and you've learned how to be a designer, the thing you have to learn is how to run your business. For those of us who were in businesses in some way, whether we're employees or leaders or whatever, we have tons of skills that we bring to the table and we need to honor and value them. So if you're working in an area where you have to time manage and you have to coordinate people and you have to put project implementations together, like guess what? That applies in this world way more than you might think it does. You can't execute a design if you do not have the ability to do project management. And you don't have to be certified in project management. You just have to know how to do that. If you are at home with your kids and that is your full-time gig, you are coordinating cats all day, every day, a million, school and this and that, all these things. Like, do not discount what you are already doing as what is valuable into what this next thing will be. Because in design, you are managing vendors and you are managing providers and you are managing logistics and you are managing, maybe you're a design associate and you're like, there's so many cats that you got to herd. And you have the skill to be able to do that when you are doing it with all these different inputs. Like don't box yourself into the box that you live today and that those skills don't come with you. They really do. And then the last thing that I would say is the same authors, just happens to be, but the same authors who wrote this book I've been talking about also wrote Who Not How. And it is so valuable if you want to be a business owner and you want to grow a business. If you want to be on your own, that's great too. You can run a good, profitable business on your own. But when you think about how you want to scale, make your like literally just make a list. What are all the things you think you need to do in a business? And then don't think about you doing all of them. Think about who you know that you can deploy to or that you can seek advice from. It doesn't just mean you have to delegate or that you have to hire. Go seek advice. And that would be my last thing is your network is more important than anything else. Your network is more important than your social media. Your network is more important than a website. Your people will put you into the contact of other people, whether it's to do the work of the business or whether it's to get you some clients. My entire business is built off of people telling other people that I could do this work for them because I didn't have a website. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say. Go to your people.
So that's like 4 nuggets. Love them all. Thank you so much. It's 100% true, everything that you're saying. And what I think is the most impactful nugget that you just shared, Heather, that I don't believe has really been shared in this capacity before on the podcast is this idea that if you are considering making this transition or starting a side hustle as a designer, or maybe you have it as a side hustle and are looking to make it full time, do not discount your life skills, the skills that you have, because I can tell you that running an interior design firm is 80% business and people skills and 20% design chops. Some of the most talented designers I know are not that successful. And some of the most successful designers I know are just okay.
Yeah, that's the category I put myself in.
Don't say that. And we're always improving, whether it's on the business side or the design side. There's lots of room to grow and learn. But I do see those who come to design as a second or third plus career, they just take off. And it's like they take power of process and then they realize, oh my gosh, I can do this.
Yeah.
You just gotta believe in yourself.
You do. You have to believe in yourself. And every project you get does start to give and add confidence to you, right? Like that's a reality because you get connected to that client and that client, you learn the intricacies of what they need and their feedback automatically gives you some confidence. But you have to be there before. You have to self-talk the confidence into yourself that you can do this because you can. You can.
Yeah. I love it. Oh my gosh, Heather, thank you so much for being my guest today. Thank you for sharing your experience inside the course, inside Power of Process, and where you're at with your business. I'm excited for everybody to follow you and watch your journey. So where can everyone find and follow you?
You can find us at Hetherington_properties on Instagram and same Hetherington Properties on Facebook. I am almost 50 and I know that many people in my age group are really good at social media. I not so much, but it is up there. and then hetheringtongroup.ca is our brand new website and it is a work in progress as well. But yeah, we're excited and I love to follow other people. So I learn from other people as well and I can't wait to be able to make connections with others.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, that was such a good conversation. In fact, Heather and I stayed on for an extra half an hour chatting about life. And truthfully, I was sharing my experience, this idea of the death of the ego, where when you leave your previous career behind, it can be really challenging. And if you're listening to this and you've done this, you can relate. This idea of I'm known for being the VP of HR at this big company, or I'm known for being the go-to marketing guru in this space and industry. I speak at conferences, and you have so much of your identity tied up in your corporate or other life. For me, for the last decade or so, it's been as an interior designer in Toronto, running, building, growing a prominent interior design firm with incredible projects, a team. My identity has been so tied to that this transition into coaching, into my online business has taken a few years for me to really let the ego go and say, it's okay to kind of feel like I'm starting again because I know it's for me. My intuition is pulling me into it. Anyhow, we went real deep with that off air. I'm sorry that we didn't record it. It would have been interesting, but that was the gist of it, which was our takeaway from this conversation. And so I hope you enjoyed this conversation, especially if you are someone who maybe doesn't value the skill set that you bring to the table. Maybe you're waiting for the time when you can go back to school, or maybe you're waiting for something or someone to come and help you. It's progress over perfection. You will figure it out. You have got this. And if you are ready to take power of process, if you are ready to really get your business organized so that it can be a thriving, exciting, and fun career, you are not going to regret joining us inside Power of Process. It is here twice a year. I would love for you to join us inside POP. Just go to RebeccaHay.com/power of process to find out more. And I hope you have a really great day. I'll see you soon.